All right, Kyle, what's happening, brother?
Not much, man. Excited to be here.
Welcome to the Meat Mafia podcast. Do you ever think you would be on a show called the Meat Mafia
No,
podcast?
but I'm honored, and I can't wait for it to get weird. So,
Well, we got introduced to our mutual friend, Chris Bates, who I actually saw last night.
oh, nice.
And God, he's just like, he's the best person. And so I was like, if he has someone to introduce me to, I'm just going to say yes. And so I'm pumped that we got connected because we've had some good conversations since, really about kind of biohacking and all the like. So I'm pumped to dive in here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You were just telling me an interesting story, which we'll dive into eventually, but about deepening your voice. But I think a good place to start for our audience is just getting a little bit of background on you in terms of your YouTube videos that you created and really how you started your creative journey, because your YouTube channel is incredible. You put together a little do-it-yourself ice plunge video. You've done Andrew Huberman's morning routine and just like outlined all these different hacks out there. And I think it's just like a wealth of resources and knowledge. So would love to just understand how you got into that.
Yeah. So I used to have a video marketing company, and I was working with lots of online entrepreneurs, and they would all tell me, Kyle, the way that you are coaching me on these ads and how to say things on camera, like, it's really good. Like, I like the way that you say it better than the way that I say it. And these are some of the best marketers in the world that are telling me this. And so, the light bulb finally went off when COVID happened, and I figured I had to shift my business. And I just said, well, let me start making videos on YouTube and talk about things that I'm really excited about, because I was already kind of getting into this health stuff because I was struggling with my own health challenges, and I just my friends weren't excited about these things, so I was just like, I need someone to tell. And,
it's always lonely being the outsider in the health space.
Yeah, so I just, I was like, I'll tell people on the internet. But I had a video on my channel. I launched my videography career with a video called How to Become a Professional Videographer in 90 Days, because I was so afraid to commit to my dream of being a videographer that I had to make a public declaration to do it. And that video ranked #1 for how to become a videographer. And it stayed like that for years. And I had just like forgotten about it. And I had saw that the views had climbed almost to 100,000 views over the course of the last couple of years. I'm like, man, there's really an evergreen nature to this YouTube thing. And my business model was really heavy on the fulfillment of doing client work. If you've ever worked with clients, it's like you land the client, and then that's when the work begins. And I would get these big paydays, but then I would be stuck in the editing or stuck in the fulfillment of these services for my clients, and it was really stressful. And I was making good money, but it was up and down, and I just wanted a way to even out my stress and my income and also build things that were systems focused. So things that would work for me once I worked on them once. And there's a passivity to YouTube, and what I do is affiliate marketing, and I wanted that to manage my stress, basically. I didn't know it at the time, but I was really struggling with a mold infection, and that's why I was so stressed out. I was having chronic anxiety. And that was one of the symptoms that was showing up. And, but I just know that I knew that I needed less stress.
Right.
Everyone's telling me, Kyle, you're stressing yourself out. It's like, you got to calm down. You got to chill out. And it's like, I can't, I can't, because I'm on this roller coaster of my income, but then also of, the stuff in the environment as well, which we've talked about, and I'm happy to go into if you want.
Yeah, we'll definitely dive into it. I'm curious. So you started the YouTube channel. You had this videography background, this marketing ad agency background, but then also this interest in health. How have you kind of parsed through choosing what videos to go with? Like, what categorically made sense to you when you were launching this, or was it just like, let me just throw this together?
It's a great question. I felt that I was very early on in the biohacking niche. Like, I was like maybe if not one of the first people. And I was just talking about the things, like I was making videos about the things that I was interested in. And I knew I have this tendency to pick things before they pop. Like I'm like 2 or 3 years ahead of every major health trend. And that's been really consistent. So I was using the Oura Ring. I was an early adopter on Oura Ring, so I made some videos about that. And I was doing the Wim Hof method and cold plunging. And I was like, there was this huge gap in the marketplace on YouTube of people making DIY cold plunge videos, but they weren't explaining to me how they actually made them. They were just saying, hey, I made this and this is how much it costs, but they didn't show me the process. So that was the DIY cold plunge video that you were referring to. And it just felt like that's a video that needs to be made, you know? And so I just kind of go with like, where's the gap? Like another example would be like, I made a video 60 days in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. And the gap when I saw it was like, I looked up hyperbaric because I knew this was like a thing and emerging trend in health and biohacking. And there was no videos. Zero, except for like on the news or like these weird, like, you know, some hospital or something. It's like, there's no YouTuber that had made a video about hyperbaric. So it was like, okay, this is an opportunity. Let me make it. And I'm excited about it. I know there'll be a future audience that will be excited about it. And I'm doing my best. You know, how I answer that question of in the beginning versus how I'm answering it now is probably way different. In the beginning, it's like, what's going to rank and how can I make affiliate money? And what's like also like I'm into, like genuinely I'm interested in. But then also now I would say it's more about how can I really express my curiosity to the fullest capacity and then also help people understand something that is complex and also help them make better decisions when it comes to their health and and their buying decisions. Because my greatest pain in life was, you know, I spent 150 grand trying to figure out that I had a mold infection.
Right.
And so, yeah, if I could just help people make better decisions when it comes to their buying choices, when it comes to health and wellness products, then, you know, I feel like that's a great service to the world and to others.
Yeah, it's massive. And so many people are spending money that they don't necessarily need to spend on things, even just outside like the standard day-to-day scope of being healthy. It's like incredible how much money gets thrown at health that's just completely wasted. It seems like most things when it comes to being healthy are free. Yes. Unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious to dive in a little bit more on the health stuff. So you've mentioned the mold infection. Was that really where you started to tinker with your health and really examine it with a microscopic lens?
Yeah, because I spent all this money trying to figure out what was going on and no one could give me an answer. And so I met this guy named Anthony DiClemente who created this company called Biohacking Secrets. And it was like, there was like Dave Asprey, who was like the guy who created biohacking. And then there was like Anthony DiClemente, who's like the next guy sort of on the trend. And Anthony became a mentor and he coached me for a little bit. And I went to this retreat, and at the retreat, he taught me the Wim Hof and cold exposure and float tanks and kind of these like introductory sort of like, they're almost like cliches now. And
especially in Austin.
Yeah, especially in Austin. And they were like a saving grace. You know, they really like moved the needle for me. They really helped. And I was, you know, treating symptoms, not root cause, but it did help me get my life back on track. So, you know, that's sort of where the obsession and the tinkering came. It's just like no one's really helping me figure this out. So I kind of got to figure it out myself and test what works, what doesn't, what gets a result, and what continues to produce that result over and over and over again. And so it was just always been like, as a marketer, it's the same approach of just like testing, tweaking, refining, testing, tweaking, refining. And I'm still on that journey of testing, tweaking, and refining.
Totally.
Yeah.
This might be a dumb question, but how did you know that you had a mold infection?
So I worked with this really talented health coach named Cliff Wild, and he gave me one test, and it was the Great Plains Organic Acids test with the mycotoxin profile. So between those two tests, you will figure out if you have mold and if the mycotoxins have gotten into your cells as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so there's obviously a spectrum here. If they've gotten into your cells, it's pretty chronic.
Yeah,
the
mycotoxins are much more dangerous and poisonous than just mold. So it's a bigger deal when you have the issues with the mycotoxins.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so once you started to realize that, or I guess taking a step back, you started to see some of these symptoms. Like, what were some of the symptoms where you're like, oh, I'm dealing with something that I need to figure out what the issue is?
Chronic anxiety, panic attacks, skin issues, gut issues, and like mood dysregulation, for sure.
Dang.
Yeah.
And so how long did it take you to figure out that it was a mold infection?
5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Because I've been hearing a lot more recently that it's becoming more and more common for people to have mold infections, but I guess
I think people are becoming more aware.
Got you.
I think a lot of people are sick with mold and they have no idea, because 80% of homes have mold issues in them.
Wow.
And so a lot of the symptoms that people are experiencing are because of the environment that they live in.
So if you're someone who's listening to this show, like what advice would you give to someone who's just like curious to get tested or like get their home tested? Like what sort of things would you lend?
Watch the video on my channel called 5 Things in Your Home That Are Silently Making You Sick.
Really?
So it breaks down the different variables that can impact you from an environmental perspective, which is air, water, mold, chemicals, and EMF. So in that video, basically I break down, all right, here's what you need to look out for in your home to see if you have mold. But it's not about if you have mold or if you don't have mold. We all got mold. So it's just about what's the mold load and what is the quality of the air. Are you filtering that air? Is it circulating through the home? And are there any really bad potential trouble sources in the home? Like, you know, the laundry is leaking, or the water heater broke, or, you know, there's something under the faucet, or you could open up your toilet and look inside the back of the toilet and you could see if there's spores growing in there. And that's basically saying, hey, there's mold in the environment, and that's a petri dish where everything's coming into. So the thing that I would really encourage people to pay attention to is if you leave your house and you feel better, and every time you come home you feel worse and you start to have symptoms, that's an indication that there's something in your environment that is triggering those symptoms. So that's like a tall tale, you know, cause of just like, hey, let me check this out. Let me then do some further investigation.
That is great advice. I feel like most people aren't even tuned into that frequency of just like checking in on that.
Yeah, that was very consistent when I was living in a moldy place. I would have all these crazy symptoms, and then I would drive somewhere and all the anxiety would go away. I would feel totally relaxed. I would feel really calm.
Interesting.
And I was like, wow, this is so weird. There's something in the house that's making me feel this way.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I want to come back to a few things, but I want to finish off the conversation around mold infections, because I feel like people don't really know anything about this yet. Like you're, again, maybe 2 years ahead of the trend.
Yeah, I definitely am.
So what did you do to kind of get rid of the mold, one in your house and then also just in your body, kind of detox it?
So the house thing is a bit complicated, and you're really going to have to work with a professional, but I moved.
Really?
Yeah, so I just got out of the house.
Probably smart.
Yeah, and in most cases, it's a hard pill to swallow, but it's usually the best option.
Yeah.
Is just get out of the house. And sometimes you have to get rid of your clothes. Sometimes you have to get rid of your sheets. You got to get rid of basically everything that was in the home because it all has mold in it, on it. And
Wow.
it's just like, depending on how bad it is, right? So you may not want to hear that if you're listening to this now and you suspect that you have these types of issues, but yes, I'll save you the trouble and just you get out of the house.
Yeah.
But the way that I healed from mold was I took these supplements. I did a protocol with this guy, and if I remember correctly, the supplements I took was berberine Supreme from Designs for Health.
And berberine is also in like pineapple, I think, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're going to need like
a lot,
like a proper dose.
Okay.
And it's really intense. So it's berberine. What I took was berberine, and this isn't medical advice, so don't just go take this. Work with someone, please.
Disclaimer.
Yeah. But this is what I took, okay? So I took berberine Supreme from Designs for Health, and then I took Candida Stat, which is an antifungal. And then I feel like I took a few other things, like a digestive enzyme and a couple other things. And it was brutal, man. It was the worst. I think I did it for 30 or 60 days, and it literally felt like I was going insane. Because when you kill the mold, that mold dies inside of you and it releases this endotoxin, and it's basically poison that's going into your bloodstream, and it makes you feel crazy.
Wow.
Like I literally felt like I was schizophrenic or something.
Wow.
And then I did the infrared sauna basically 5 days a week, and I walked 20,000 steps a day. And then I optimized my sleep. And that's how I got so obsessed with sleep, was that Cliff, like, God bless him, he's such a good teacher. He knew that if you entrain the circadian rhythm, because there's an internal clock in every cell of your body, and you can entrain all of those clocks to be on the same rhythm through circadian rhythm entrainment, then you can optimize the body's healing process and optimal hormone production, optimal blood sugar, optimal everything.
Wow.
It all comes back to this really basic, free, fundamental thing of just having really, really good circadian rhythm health. And so that's like the foundation by which everything's built. And so before I even did the protocol, I focused everything on circadian rhythm, which I know we're going to dive into here pretty soon. But yeah, just by doing that, and then I did a gut healing protocol after the mold kill protocol. And I don't remember what I took, but that was about 90 days in total. By the end of the 90 days, I was mold free, and I retested, and I've retested a couple times, and I'm totally free.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were your hormones just wrecked from the mold?
I can imagine. Yes. Like, I didn't test a lot of stuff again to Cliff's like expertise. Like, he knew that like all my tests were probably going to be whack,
right?
You know, if I had this severe of a mold infection. So he just didn't test me because it was like, you're just going to make yourself feel worse.
Freak yourself out.
About how everything is wrong and all this stuff. So
wow.
He was really skilled in his approach of like just giving me just enough to like start to make progress, and I did.
You mentioned a few other environmental toxins, EMF, water. I feel like those two in particular have been getting a lot of press recently.
Yes.
Do you have any practical advice for people when it comes to limiting EMF exposure, which is, I think, something that the load for people is rising like
it's a lot. Yeah,
precipitously.
It's yeah. So the guy that I made the video with, Ryan Blazer, founder of testmyhome.com, go check him out. He's like the guru of all gurus when it comes to environmental health. I can link you up with him if you want to chat with him.
That'd be sweet.
And he talked to me about this approach of practical avoidance. So basically, practical avoidance just means when you can, avoid it.
Yeah.
So he puts his phone on airplane mode basically all the time. And unless he needs to use it to call or text someone, his phone is on airplane mode. And so that's like a little hack, but then he hardwired his whole house. So like there's no Wi-Fi in his house.
Wow.
And so when he works, he plugs into an Ethernet, and he plugs his phone into an Ethernet with a converter, and he just works wired in.
I like that.
And I like that too, because I think we've gotten really used to being able to use technology anywhere, and it creates this weird association with all of our spaces.
Yes.
Versus he just has an office and he only works in the office.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
We've gotten way too accustomed to the idea that people can just like access you for work at any moment in time.
Yes.
It's I think it's a subtle stressor. It's like, you know,
it's always on,
this
man.
feeling that you always have to be responsive to people for work related things. And I mean, granted, you know, you can work a lot, but you don't need to necessarily be like working around the clock.
Totally.
Yeah.
Always available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you do for like a water filtration?
Water. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I drink spring water. Ideally it would be in glass. Right now I'm not in glass. I haven't found a good company yet, but for water filtering, though, he has a whole home filter. So it's really intense. It's like 5 stages. You know, there's a water softener. He has like a reverse osmosis. Then he has like he's got a bunch of things. I don't remember off the top of my head, but if I were to make a recommendation, just do reverse osmosis and remineralize the water and rotate the minerals that you're using. So different types of salts. And because when you do reverse osmosis, you strip the water of everything. But I like spring water, you know? So if you can get spring water in glass, and you can look up where it comes from and the contaminants and all that stuff, just do your research. I don't know if you saw the Athletic Greens video that I recently released.
Yeah,
you did.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just, for those who haven't seen it, I just came to this big conclusion making this video of just like everyone just needs to do a lot more research on ingredients, where things are coming from, sourcing, and it takes a little bit of extra legwork, maybe an extra half an hour, but it's so worth it. And
Absolutely.
if you just take the time to do that, you'll find really high quality stuff if you know what to look for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The concept of outsourcing responsibility for your health is something I feel very passionate about, because
Yeah.
it doesn't take that much time. It could just be 30 minutes to an hour of research, and you can figure out a lot of these solutions, especially with YouTube, Twitter, like
ChatGPT.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, use all of them to synthesize,
cross-reference.
yeah, and experiment.
Yeah.
Like that's what most people are afraid to do, is just be like, I'm just going to guinea pig on myself a little bit and see if it works.
I also think people want to have it perfect in the first go, where
Right.
it's like it could be an ever evolving process. So like for me, like I even caveated, I'm like, yeah, like ideally I'd be in glass, but right now I'm in BPA free plastic.
Right.
You know, so it's like, is that ideal? No. And like I'm working towards the ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that. So as far as environmental toxins go, is there, I know you obviously had your situation with mold, but is there another one that you think is like kind of this silent killer out there?
Yeah, I think I'm big on air. I'm getting into air quality. Yeah, it's like really
I'm big on
interesting.
air. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. So my buddy, I got a buddy in town. Again, I can introduce you to. He's
we'd love to.
awesome. He's like total savant when it comes to air quality.
Really?
And he owns an air filter company called Jasper, JASPR. And they're like the Maseratis of like air filters.
Really?
He's super legit. And basically, I'm actually making a video with him on Saturday, and there's so many particulates that are in the air, especially for example when you're cooking. And I now have one of his Jasper units in my. I just got it and I put it in my kitchen, and anytime we cook, man, that thing like kicks on like crazy, and it goes all the way to like the red, and it even shows you like how many particulates are in the air.
Wild.
And it's like we would never drink dirty water, right? Like people who watch or listen to the show like are probably up on their water game and up on their like where their nutrition's coming from. They're organic, they're locally sourced ideally, and all this stuff. But no one's thinking about their air, and we're breathing nonstop. And the air quality in our homes is worse than the air quality outside.
Yeah.
Because then we have all this off gassing from furniture, we have cleaning products, we have mold, we have all these different things, smoke, all these different things, air pollution, all this stuff is coming into our home, and then the home is so airtight that it can't get out, and no one's opening a window. That's like not happening anymore.
Right.
And so we're just sitting basically in our own like fecal matter from an air perspective.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to look back on this time once we know a little bit more and be like, wow, I can't believe we were putting ourselves and our families and our children at risk in this way.
Dang.
Yeah.
So why is this a modern phenomenon? Like, was this not an issue previously, or was this I mean, obviously there's like cars and.
Yeah. It's because we're spending more time inside.
Yeah, true.
Like we used to spend most of our time out and about. And I also think just with industrialization and speeding up efficiency and everything, it's just like we're trying to get as quick and convenient as efficient as possible, and all of these things, there's a cost to them. And all those costs are like starting to add up, and we're seeing it layer on top of it itself. So for example, it's like, okay, it's really convenient to like have this like printer that you just connect to your phone and you can just print from afar.
Right.
And then it's also really convenient to have like a gas stove instead of like an electric stove. And it's also convenient to have like a smart home. And it's also convenient to just, build a home really fast and not think about the paint or, if the wood was left out in the rain. And it's just like, how can we do this as cheap and as quick as possible? And that's where things start to fall apart. And once you layer these things on top of each other, that's where people start having real problems.
Yeah, quick and cheap is not the way to do like
almost
anything. But that's the same thing with food too.
Yes.
It's like we've gotten very comfortable with the idea of just quick, cheap food. It's like food is meant to be something that's sacred in a lot of senses, that most people used to just pray over and feel some sort of fullness and sense of nourishment, both from like connecting with people around a dinner table, but also just by feeling gratitude for having food. We just like don't have that anymore.
Yeah, it should be a ritual.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the environmental stuff, I feel like people in Austin are pretty privy to, but it's also something that it seems like we're just on the forefront of figuring out more and more about it.
Yeah, I plan to be on the leading edge of that and really shouting from the mountaintops, like, "Hey guys, look at this! Like, it's a big deal. Like, trust me, you're gonna you want to make some changes because it just, it affected me so much, and I see how it affects other people, and most people have no idea, and even the ones who do, it's like it's a very confusing world, and it feels overwhelming, and I think that sense of there's so many options and so many things to start to look at stops people from really making any changes.
I want to unpack that a little bit, like just the idea of people feeling overwhelmed when it comes to health stuff, because I feel I've definitely felt that way in the past, but I feel like once you're on the other side of the fence of having either gone through something where you really needed to create solutions for yourself and find solutions, you understand that it's not that hard. But the actual psychology of really testing and figuring out things for yourself, it leaves a lot of people feeling paralyzed and unwilling to try.
Yeah. So are you asking like how do I approach that?
I'm more so asking like how do you think about like framing things for people to just encourage them to try things, whether it's around environmental toxins, diet, lifestyle, just, basically anything when it comes to health.
Yeah. I made this video with Brian Johnson, the guy who's, going crazy on the longevity stuff. And
did you really?
Yeah. Reversing his age. And he spends $2 million, a year, like testing and tweaking and refining everything to basically slow down his speed of aging. And, I thought I was going to have this like big revelation of like there's this new thing that's going to change everything, or this is the one hack, or this like something that was new or revolutionary. And what I left with was this really sort of reassuring sense of, oh, it's actually pretty simple. And he talked about the power laws, and the big power laws are the things that we all know and hear about. And it's just really not cool to talk about, which is just like, go to bed and wake up at the same time, eat real food, like have good relationships, see the sun, move your body like in a way that works for you.
Yes.
Drink water, ideally stuff without contaminants. Drink enough of it, and he really just broke it down. It's like the things that are getting in the way of people really being healthy are their addictions, to feeling a certain way, to fitting in, to social media, to porn, to all these things. They're all vices that are numbing us out in some way emotionally. And if we were to remove those things, what we would feel is that we don't feel good. And when that pain is there for a reason. And the reason is to motivate you to change.
Totally.
And so when people I've had this huge like sort of turn in my perspective around pain, which is like, pain is a beautiful part of the human experience because it is an indication that something is out. And it forces you to pause and like look at the thing and like, well, what's that? And then you have to make some decisions, about what you're going to do about it. And the reason why it's so liberating for people, myself included, when I met Brian is like, oh, all these things are really within our control. Yes, there are some nuances when it comes to your nutrition. Yes, there are some nuances when it comes to your exercise program. And yes, there are some environmental things that you need to be aware of. But, and a big but, is that you could start with these little habits, just like I started with my sleep. That was the first thing that I started working on. And now I'm like really working on my movement. And now I'm really working on my nutrition and my gut health. And now I'm really working on making sure my life is in alignment and like I'm on purpose and like I'm feeling happy with how I'm spending my time and stuff like that. And it becomes this thing where it's more like your life's work of art is like the practice. And by allowing yourself to really take the time to understand these things for yourself, not just because some dude on a podcast told you this is the way that you should eat or this is the way you should move or whatever, then it becomes this journey of self-discovery of who you really are. And I feel that healing and being healthy and being well is, in my definition, coming home to who you really are. And it's not about becoming something necessarily, but it's about unbecoming what you're really not and what you've been conditioned into. And like, I know you guys talk about this stuff on the podcast all the time. It's like, you know, cultural conditioning, the media, like all these lies that we've been fed over time. And it's just about finding out what's true for you, right? And really, really learning what that is. And yes, we got to get our water right. And yes, we got to make sure we have air filtration in our home. And yes, but it's just like one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And it looks like this huge mountaintop when you're down at the bottom. But I think it's podcasts like this and community and like people that you're following and looking up to in this space that allow that quest to feel a little bit easier, you know, where it's just like, oh, like I got some breadcrumbs right here.
Yeah.
You know, Kyle said, oh, I need to turn over the toilet thing to check for mold. And it's like, okay, I found some. So it's like, okay, maybe I need to hire an inspector. And then boom, you just kind of like move down the track. And I think what has helped me, because honestly, it's been a mission to get to where I am from where I was. The thing that I really figured out at some point in time, I don't know when, is I needed to buy into this idea of mastery. And mastery is not about just getting a result. It's about becoming the best. And there's this book called The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. And in that book,
Haven't heard of it.
He deconstructs how to learn. And he was like the #1 chess player in the world. And also won the world champion of Tai Chi push hands. So he translated his skills from learning and deconstruction over to another sport.
Wow.
And in his book, The Art of Learning, it's all about the beauty of the process of becoming the best and building skills. And when it becomes a game of skill acquisition and education and learning, and you're on this journey instead of how can I just get there as fast as possible,
right?
It becomes something that becomes your life's work and more engaging. And it's not just about it's not your life's work in the sense of, oh, I need to be a health influencer, I need to be a health guru, but it's your life's work of like, how do you live the healthiest, best life possible?
Right.
Right. Because everything that you want to do requires energy. And in order to have energy, you need to be healthy. So how do we get there?
Yeah. Man, I loved everything you just said. And one of the things that kept coming to mind as you were speaking was just this idea of fear being this obstruction for so many people going on that quest that you were talking about. And just, it almost feels like you do need to have that painful experience for a lot of people in order to really take the first step to build that type of momentum, to get curious and continue to be curious about making these types of changes in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I could be, dude, I think Brett too, like both him and I'm not sure how the context of your health journey, but like, dude, like I have every reason to play the victim.
Totally.
Every reason, but it just doesn't serve. So I just was like, okay, what's the actual opportunity here? The opportunity is I've been given a gift to build the healthiest body possible that I would never otherwise have chased.
Right.
And I'm like so thankful that now I have that opportunity. And it's not like, oh, I'm trying to get healthy from the past. It's like, no, I'm becoming an athlete. Right? The opposition of someone who's sick is, in my opinion, a high level athlete.
Right.
Yeah. So how can you build a body that's free of disease? It's so strong that disease cannot exist. Right? It's a totally different energy.
Totally.
Right? So the come from changes. So like instead of, if you're overwhelmed and you're thinking about, man, how am I going to do all these things? Like Brett says, I got to go carnivore, and Homeboy says I got to check my house for mold, and it's just like I know how it can feel, but it's like the languaging and the energy and the come from really, I think, changes the trajectory and ultimately creates the result that is going to be more favorable in the long term.
Yeah, I keep coming back to the Brian Johnson stuff too, where it's like a lot of this stuff is stuff that everyone knows is the right answer, right?
Yeah.
Like
he's doing some extreme stuff, but if we break it down, he's eating real food. He has a really consistent bedtime routine, and he works out for an hour every morning. And he fixed his posture. And like
and now he's like magnitudes healthier.
And yeah, and now he's like, you know, perfect.
I guess all that,
health, you know,
all that costs $2 million a year.
Yeah,
most of it's the
testing.
Yeah.
Yes, testing and stuff. So he's doing lots of extreme stuff, but like he really told me, he's like, yeah, man. I mean, it's all it's like fun.
Really?
This is like extra, you know.
Yeah,
like we're pushing the envelope as far as we can with what I'm doing. This is what he was saying. But for normal people who just want to be healthy, it's like, yeah, just do the basics and basically take out the bad stuff and just do the good stuff consistently.
Yeah.
So liberating.
Like
so attainable.
Cutting. I'm such a big addition by subtraction person. That. It makes life so much better when you can just cut out the stuff that's just not working.
Yeah.
It's not serving you.
Essentialism by Greg McKeown is one of my favorite books of all time.
Really?
Yeah.
What's it about?
It's all about boiling down everything to what's the essential components.
Oh, okay.
So it's like what is essential and what's non-essential, and we just get rid of the non-essential.
I love it.
Yeah.
So we've talked previously about sleep, and you just mentioned it. I think we need to dive into it a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
So you've geeked out with me on the sleep topic, and I'm just curious to dive in a bit on how you got curious about sleep in general. I mean, obviously it was probably a big part of your process of just figuring out the mold stuff, but
yeah, so it's a combination. So basically I was at this mastermind with Sam Ovens, and do you know Sam Ovens?
No.
So he used to run this company called consulting.com.
Okay.
And he spent like half a day basically telling all the entrepreneurs in the room that they need to buy an Oura Ring. That's the first thing they need to do. And people had paid $36,000 to be in this room. So, you know, I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, let me get an Oura Ring, you know? And he said something to me that was really profound. He said, Kyle, like, if you can't go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, how could you ever expect to do anything great in this world? And I'm like, facts. Okay.
like, I guess you're right.
Yeah. Like that, like in my head, like logically, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. You know, there's always exceptions to the rule, but like, I needed to hear that at that time. It really resonated. It really struck me. So I got an Oura Ring. You know, I'm going through the mold stuff. Cliff, my health coach, is teaching me about the circadian rhythm, and I started to get really good results because I just had this quick feedback loop where I'd do something, and then I'd get the Oura Ring score the next day, and I'm like, great, that either worked or it didn't work, and I was isolating variables, and over time I was just refining, and I eventually got a perfect night's sleep, like 199 sleep score, whatever. And I remember waking up and feeling like, whoa, this is a different human experience. And I remember I was smiling for no reason, and I walked into my kitchen, and I was just like, I had this grin on my face like an idiot. And my roommates are like, you okay? And I'm like, yes, I'm better than I've ever been. And I just got obsessed once I felt what that tasted like. And I just applied over and over again. And I was recently, when I was like 28 or so, I got like, I think I shared this with you, like diagnosed with like ADHD or whatever.
Yes. And
so people with ADHD have this obsession tendency. It's either like they have really hard times focusing, or they're like very, very hyper focused. And so I have this fixation when I like something and I become passionate about it. It's like I can't see anything else.
Right.
So I just went all in on this sleep stuff. And then I started to share what I was learning. And as I started to share, people started to reach out to me. And then I started to help people. And then that's kind of how it evolved.
So the Oura Ring was huge for you. I guess sleep tracking in general has gotten really popular. Is there anything else that you've tried other than Oura Ring, like Whoop, or you have a Whoop?
Yeah.
All right, nice.
Yeah. So I'm wearing a Whoop and an Oura Ring right now.
Which one do you prefer?
So I'm actually making a video about that.
Okay, cool.
But if the
you don't,
short
you don't need to spill the beans on our show.
the short answer is I think the Oura Ring makes more sense.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like half the price, and I think the interface is better.
Nice.
Yeah.
What are the, outside of going to bed and waking up at the same time, what are the factors that play into getting really good sleep?
Yeah. So we'll start at a high level, and then we can get into the weeds if you want.
Cool.
So at a high level, the most important thing is circadian rhythm. So that means going to bed and waking up at the same time, but then viewing light in the first hour of the day. So I recommend that people go for a morning walk, 20 to 30 minutes. If the only thing you get from this podcast is you do this 20 to 30 minute morning walk, then my job is done. It is the one thing that if you do it, it makes everything else easier or unnecessary. Okay. So that 20-minute morning walk is going to stimulate the release of a healthy amount of cortisol, which is going to regulate the proper production of melatonin in the evening. When you see images pass by your eyes, it's going to downregulate this part of your brain called the amygdala, which is going to make you feel more relaxed and less stressed, less anxious. It's also going to stimulate bile production by up to 200%, meaning it's going to get you ready for your first meal, and it's going to improve your gut health. It's also going to increase or stimulate this chemical called ghrelin, and ghrelin will also help you get ready to eat. So it's also going to help with your gut health.
Right.
And it's going to be good for your motility to help you have that first bowel movement in the morning. It's also going to impact the second factor that influences your circadian rhythm. So the first one is light. The second one is movement. So light timing and movement are going to drastically improve the quality of your circadian rhythm. So what does movement mean? Well, we're going for that 20 to 30 minute walk, but then that also means working out at the same time every day, or going for walks after your meals, which is going to help with your blood sugar, which is another thing that I forgot to mention in that 20-minute morning walk. When you go for that walk in the morning, it's going to bring down your blood sugar, which is going to set it for the rest of the day. What you do in the morning from a blood sugar perspective is going to radically impact the rest of the day.
Wow.
So that's why I say this morning walk is like, it's
sacred.
Yeah, it is. It's the linchpin, you don't mess with it.
Yeah.
So you're going to walk after your meals if you can, 10, 20, 30 minutes. It's going to bring down that blood sugar. It's also going to give you more light throughout the day, which is great for the circadian rhythm. And then meal timing. So you want to have your meals at the same time. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you do fasting, then just lunch and dinner. Just have it at the same time. That is going to teach your body to produce the right type of hormones and chemicals at the same time every day so that your body becomes more efficient at doing its job, digesting its food and regulating your blood sugar and all that stuff. The reason why this is so important from a metabolic standpoint is because your blood sugar has such an impact on your sleep that by doing these things, you're really kind of like, just by nailing the circadian rhythm, you're kind of like setting yourself up for, no matter what, having a good night's rest.
Right.
By eating at the same time, viewing light at the same time, and moving at the same time, you're just like, these are the levers that keep someone healthy.
Right.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
It's funny. You mentioned all these different things. None of them are related to having like a softer pillow or a softer mattress.
Yes.
They're all your waking hours. What are you supposed to do to set yourself up for really high quality sleep? Is that more so for just hormonal regulation? So you're like in that right hormonal state to just go to bed?
Yeah. Because like I said before, every cell in your body has this internal clock. And so by entraining your circadian rhythm using these three factors, your light timing, meal timing, and movement, you're telling your body when to produce certain hormones, when to produce certain chemicals. So it's very regulated. And our body loves to be in a rhythm,
right?
Because it's efficiency. The body wants to be as efficient as possible. So when we cue it the right way, we basically it's like the Pavlovian response of like, you ring the bell, the dogs come out to eat the food, then you put the food away, and then you ring the bell, and then the dogs come out and they're still salivating. Right. So, so being ritualized like this makes it super easy to fall asleep.
Do you ever fear of like over indexing to some of these things, or is sleep something where you're like, this is just not negotiable for me?
I think, yes. I think I have over-indexed for sleep. And it's the foundation by which everything is built on.
Yeah.
So I think that my caveat to that is that if you're really fit, like really, like your workout regimen's super dialed and like you're not overtraining, but like you're an athlete, I think you can get away with a lot more.
Yeah.
Because naturally, by being super fit, your body is going to be working really well.
Yeah.
Like your gut health is going to be good. Your hormones are going to be good, but you do need recovery. So I think sleep is, I don't know, I go back and forth because I think I've over indexed for it in the fact that maybe like I should have spent more time on my like training and yeah, like that's what I would say. But I would also say that it is the number one thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad I spent as much time on it as I did.
Yeah. Well, you're saying over-index and wish you spent more time on training. People who are under-indexing sleep are probably, the trade-off is they're spending more time like drinking or you know, they're probably doing negative things.
I'm not thinking about that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about in terms of my health protocols and like how I'm spending my time and what I'm optimizing for. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Have you helped any of your friends kind of figure out their sleep?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've helped thousands of people now.
How is that looked? Like, what sort of revelations have some of them had?
Oh, okay. I mean, I've just had so many I worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and high performers, like on a one-on-one coaching perspective. And then I've had hundreds of people go through my course. And I just started to see these patterns that were emerging that I wasn't really hearing other sleep experts talk about. Number one is the blood sugar sleep connection. So if you're waking up between the hours of 3 and 5 o'clock consistently, you have blood sugar dysregulation, most likely. It's either that or stress or temperature. But if it's at 3 to 5 and you're up and it's like, I can't go back to sleep, you're wide awake, blood sugar. Why? Well, when your blood sugar is crashing, your body will release cortisol to regulate that blood sugar. And so that cortisol spike is what wakes you up. But sometimes when we're really stressed and we're ruminating on something, like this actually happened to me like a month or two ago, I could not sleep through the night. And that never happens to me. But there was this, I mean, not to get too woo, but there was this thing that was happening in my life that I had to like let go of, or like I hadn't made a decision on this really important, seemingly from my perspective, thing. And it was keeping me awake, you know? And I thought it was my blood sugar. I thought my blood sugar was out of whack because it was consistently between the hours of 3 and 5.
Interesting.
But then I got a blood sugar monitor and I woke up one night, boom, pricked my finger, tested my blood sugar. I was 90, which is perfect. You know, it's exactly where it should be.
Right.
And I'm like, it's not blood sugar. So then I unpacked it a little bit and there was like some emotional, like kind of like spiritual kind of stuff that, and when I mean spiritual, it just means like, what am I doing with my life? Like, how am I orientating around my purpose and how I'm spending my time and who I be in the world type of thing. Right. So little asterisks there on the blood sugar thing. But the reason why I teach circadian rhythm is because it evens out the blood sugar. It stabilizes it through those walks and working out and stuff like that. But it can be very hard for people to regulate their blood sugar if they're in this pattern, because when they're not sleeping through the night, their blood sugar then becomes more unstable and it's harder to regulate throughout the day.
Right.
So it's kind of like this negative feedback loop. And so with that, I mean, there's a bunch of different strategies you could deploy, but you know, one hack that I can give it's changed my life, is eating your food in the right order. So eating vegetables, stuff that has fiber in it first, then eating your protein and fats, then eating your carbs. And the reason why is when you eat the fiber first, it will line your intestines and it can blunt your blood sugar spike by up to 70%. If you combine that with going for a walk after your meals, big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference in your blood sugar.
That's massive.
Yeah.
So you saw that through a lot of the people in your courses when you started applying that level of just like monitoring and walking after these meals,
Yeah.
ordering your meals in the right way, you saw lower blood sugar?
Yeah, and
Wow.
in myself too. You know,
Wow.
like I had a CGM and I was tracking all this stuff. Another thing that it's a hot take, but I'm happy to say it
Here
is,
for it.
yeah. So like, I don't recommend that people take hot showers or hot baths before bed.
Really?
Not even close to bed. Not even an hour within bed. Because when I was wearing a CGM, I would take a hot shower, watch my blood sugar spike, and when I take a cool shower, I watch my blood sugar come down.
Yeah, interesting.
And to be frank, I don't see people putting up numbers sleep-wise like me, and they're the ones saying you should do a hot shower, hot bath.
Right.
And the science says that if you take a hot shower, hot bath, it will regulate your core body temperature because it cools you down. Because you're hot outside, your exterior is hot, so your body cools you down. That's the science. That's legitimate. That exists. But that fails to recognize the connection of the blood sugar. So things don't happen in silos. There's secondary and tertiary consequences. And I just find it hilarious, you know, and it's not, I mean, it's just, you know, who has the time to think about these things, right? Except for people like me, you know, but I shift people into taking cool showers and I get them sleeping through the night.
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
And very underrated. I feel like most people, 90% of people are taking hot showers, maybe more.
And it doesn't have to be super cold. You don't have to Wim Hof it. It's just like cool. Just cool enough where it's a little bit uncomfortable, and it will be way better for your blood sugar in my experience, anecdotally, and what I've seen with my clients and customers. Yeah.
So you mentioned the sequencing of food for better sleep. Is there anything else out there when it comes to nutrition for better sleep that you would recommend?
I think it's really individualized and how metabolically fit someone is and how good their blood sugar response is. So for me, I'm a bit on the lower carb side. I eat about 150 grams of carbs a day. I'm working on increasing that. But if I don't move enough and I go over that threshold, it will disrupt my sleep.
Interesting.
So I think it's really applying the scientific method to like your sleep optimization of really just like seeing like, okay, what foods really do help me sleep better, and like pay attention to your stats and isolate variables. So I can't say that like high carb or low carb is better, or keto or carnivore or whatever is better, but I will say whatever is best for your blood sugar is gonna be great. Yeah.
And then in terms of supplementation, is there anything that you would recommend? I know a lot of people talk about magnesium when it comes to sleep.
Yep. So I talk about magnesium. I love magnesium.
Love it.
I use Natural Stacks MagTech, and it has magnesium threonate, glycinate, and taurate. And the reason why I love them is because they third-party test every single batch, and they have an open source transparency policy, meaning you know exactly where their ingredients are coming from, and you can trace them if you want to.
Wow.
So if you want to do your research and you want to like check it for heavy metals or whatever, like that's available.
Wow.
So I love their transparency. Full disclosure, I've been working with them and promoting them for years now, and I do have a 50% discount code. So
wow,
it's like if you want to try it,
that's solid.
Yeah, like no one else has this discount because I think I'm their top affiliate for magnesium, but it's Kyle Got Camera if you want to try it. And yeah, when I give people this magnesium, I've converted people from other popular magnesium brands that other influencers promote.
Yeah.
And because people take it and they're like, oh, I don't feel any, magnesium doesn't really work. I convert them over to Natural Stacks. Instantly their REM score goes up and they have crazy dreams.
Wow. And
they really feel it. And so that's how I know that it's working, is I see it in the data, and then I see it in everyone's experience around me, because I put everyone on MagTech, and then all of a sudden they're like, dude, Kyle, the dreams, you know?
Really?
Yeah.
That's unreal.
Yeah. So beyond magnesium, I don't think we need much in terms of supplementation. Really? I think if you nail the circadian rhythm, and then there's a few other things we can dive into, and you have a good blood sugar and stuff like that, you get your environment right, you have a good evening routine. And I want to talk about dopamine too. I think that's really, it's a really important topic that no one's really sharing about.
Really?
Yeah.
Just in terms of sleep?
Yeah. So basically, I was doing some research for the Andrew Huberman video, and I noticed that every once in a while I would do these dopamine detoxes. I would go on a retreat or go into nature and put my phone away, and I would notice that my motility would get a lot better, my gut health, and my sense of peace and stillness and presence and was heightened. And and the anxiety would sort of melt away. And as I was doing this research for the Andrew Huberman video, I learned that there's this inverse relationship between dopamine and serotonin. So when dopamine goes up, serotonin goes down. And dopamine is an activated, chasing, high sympathetic dominant state of feeling, right? And serotonin is a very relaxing, at ease, sort of all is well in the world type of feeling.
Right.
Parasympathetic, more parasympathetic. And it's not just like one or the other, but it's like they're always working together. So it's not just like one is here and, you know, it's like it's just about a ratio, right? And I had this one client named, I actually won't say his name. I had this one client, and we got on the kickoff call, and I was talking to him, trying to assess what's the one thing that's really like messing his sleep up. You know, he's diagnosed sleep apnea, hasn't had a good night's sleep in 7 years. He's tried everything, quote unquote. And when I was doing this intake with him, I realized that he was spending 12 hours a day on his phone. So I said, this is it. This is the one thing.
Really?
So let's cut the screen time in half. I want you to delete all these apps. And that first night, he slept completely through the night.
Dang.
And I was like, oh my God, I think there's something here. And I started to test it and experiment on myself, but then also with people around me and my clients and stuff like that. And I noticed that when I would reduce someone's screen time significantly, they would have no problems with their sleep.
Wow.
And so what I discovered, this is a hypothesis, I guess, working thesis, which is that we're so overstimulated right now that we're so leaning on the scale of high dopaminergic state compared to a serotonin state that it's like it's very hard for us to switch into rest and digest. So we're in this high beta brainwave state, thinking, problem solving, right? Very activated. And in order to sleep, you need to get down to delta to have really great sleep, right? And so we do that by doing activities that can reduce that stimulation and increase our sense of peace and at ease, right? So meditation, mind-body work, like going into nature, like grounding, like all of this is very cuddling, you know, like having sex. All this stuff is high in serotonin, right? Like it helps your body produce serotonin. And I just started to play with these ideas, and I became obsessed with it. And I noticed that I'm, I guess, a sensitive person, but I noticed that the days where I spend more than 3 hours on my screen time, it really messes with me.
Wow.
So when I started reducing my screen time, it just makes it really easy to be present, to be focused, and to sleep.
So the other sources of dopamine that might, or not sources of dopamine, but causes for people to have this overstimulation. So it's phone. What else would fall into that category? I'm sure it's like, you know, nicotine for some people.
I mean, coffee. Yeah.
Right.
Like all this. I mean, I think it's not about demonizing dopamine, but it's just about like finding healthy ways.
Understanding it.
Yeah. Understanding it and finding healthy ways to get healthy amounts of dopamine and restoring your dopamine baseline.
Right.
So what I found was when I was overstimulated, and look, I'm not perfect. Like I fall back into this state and this trap all the time. It's the battle of my life.
Right.
Literally, it's an everyday fight, you know?
Yes.
And not every day do I win. But it's like, how can I get a healthy amount of dopamine? Well, going outside for that morning walk will produce dopamine. Going to the gym will produce dopamine. Going, you know, for a bike ride will produce dopamine. Hanging out with friends will produce dopamine, right? So I just started removing the cheap dopamine. So I'm doing this experiment of the low information diet. So no more podcasts, unfortunately. And for me right now,
I'll send you a transcript.
Yes, please. And no consumption of any kind other than books or when I need to do research for a project.
Wow.
So just by doing that one thing alone, it's dramatically changed how I perceive the world day to day.
Is there anything else that you think about when it comes to sleep that's affecting people's sleep negatively? One that I think about is I recently started doing mouth tape because I breathe through my mouth when I sleep, and it's been a massive unlock for me. Yeah. I mean, we could go down the breathing rabbit hole a little bit. Like I think most people are mouth breathing, and it happens because we sit and we collapse our diaphragm.
So it, teaches us how to breathe through our chest and then eventually through our mouth, which puts us in a sympathetic state. So that makes you more stressed, more anxious.
Right.
And so I do what's called Buteyko breathing, 20 minutes every single morning. Buteyko breathing is also known as reduced breathing, which is about slowing the breath down, in through the nose, out through the nose, and then chopping off 20% of the inhale and letting the air fall out so gently that you can barely feel the air passing by the hair follicles. What this is going to do is it's going to increase carbon dioxide, which is going to drive oxygen into your blood and increase blood flow to your brain and produce nitric oxide, which is antiviral, antibacterial, and it's great. We all want nitric oxide. It's a really good thing.
Yeah.
And that'll also shift you into parasympathetic, make you feel more relaxed. And I found that falling asleep and staying asleep really has a lot to do with just being in a parasympathetic state and being rest and digest, being a in a lower brainwave state and feeling safe, feeling safe, feeling relaxed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like one of the things that I think about a lot that I don't particularly feel like most people are paying enough attention to is just the feeling of like chronic stress in people's lives.
Yeah.
And just getting good sleep and focusing on breathing and all these things that we're talking about are really focused around just reducing that stress load in general.
Yeah. So I think that's a good jumping off point for the whole mindset identity piece of this too when it comes to sleep is I have these belief systems that allow me to get bulletproof sleep. So regardless of my environment or regardless of what's happening, I always know how to get great sleep. And I get better sleep than almost anyone on the planet.
Yeah. I mean,
and whether that's true or not doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Even though Whoop tells me I'm in the top 10 percentile of people who wear Whoop in terms of sleep, but I know it to be true in me.
Yeah.
And so my behaviors are automatic. And it's because I tell myself to, I'm placeboing myself into the result.
Yeah.
And I feel that it cannot be underlooked or overvalued how powerful that identity is, because everywhere I go, people get better sleep.
Yeah.
That's how powerful and influential my own self-delusion is.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think most success is some level of self-delusion.
Yeah.
Or it all comes back to just conviction, belief, and that level of belief that can inspire other people to be like, oh, maybe I should, I'm going to now start focusing more on my sleep just because this podcast.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm curious, you mentioned your work with entrepreneurs. Is there anything that you notice in entrepreneurs specifically that they just constantly struggle with? I'm sure a lot of it is time management, stress management, but things that they struggle with health-wise that you have had success helping them work through?
Yeah, there's two things that come up. I think the first thing is the blood sugar thing. So I think a lot of them are having metabolic issues and they have no idea, and that's why their sleep is not good. So when I help them discover that the way that they're eating and what they're eating and the time that they're eating and all these things are really messing with their sleep, it's this big light bulb moment. It's I worked with a guy for 3 months recently, and he had worked with several sleep coaches, which I didn't even know there was that many out there, but he had worked with a few of them, and he was convinced that it was just all in his mind. But then I got him on a CGM, and it turns out he had reactive hypoglycemia.
Wow. So
he's having blood sugar issues.
Yeah.
And no one had ever looked at that, know? So I think I really want to put a pin on the blood sugar conversation, because I think it's this whole world that people have no idea how much it's really influencing them, whether it's chronic anxiety, your blood sugar can really impact your mental health, or it's your sleep, or it's your energy.
Right. It's
all these things are in flux and affecting you in so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the stats that I constantly come back to is 88% of people are metabolically unhealthy, and that's effectively blood sugar.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
so
Then the other thing that I realized working with entrepreneurs is I don't know if many people like that archetype, like I don't know if they feel safe to feel relaxed. Like I think they've trained themselves to be chronically stressed. And so they don't even, it feels very unfamiliar to their nervous system that it's okay to be relaxed.
Right. That's such an interesting observation.
Yeah. And it's kind of hard to unwind because there's deep psychological sort of conditioning that they've created that allows them to perform at a high level under immense amount of pressure that they don't know if they could perform at that level if there's not that pressure.
If they were relaxed.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But I would argue that your best ideas always come to you when you're relaxed. That's why you get ideas in the shower. That's why you get ideas when you're in nature. That's why walking or like before you go to bed.
Right.
It's in that alpha state, that alpha brainwave state that you really get those downloads, those insights. And I think, I think it's something that I'm still really like. I think I know how to be relaxed, but I think I sometimes forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's tough. I mean, especially when you layer on all the different elements of technology that we have to deal with today in terms of like, I just think social media kind of enables.
That's the dopamine,
yeah.
Right? That's that feeling.
It's just this feeling of like, constantly needing to or wanting to compare yourself or just like coming across information at a level that we're not used to coming across.
So much stimulus, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's the one thing I notice when I take these phone breaks is I just start processing. Like I'm like, and there's this whole thing about like people don't know what it's like to be bored anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like a really good thing to be bored.
Yeah.
Because when you're bored is like your mind is like processing.
Right.
There's space.
Right.
When there's no space, there's no time to process.
Definitely.
So I think that's why, I live and die by my meditation practice. Like I do not miss it. I either do the guided breathing or the meditation, one of the two. I'm doing one of them, if not both of them, every day. And that's at least giving me 20 to 30 minutes of just like dedicated space for myself.
I love it.
Yeah.
What's the next YouTube video you're working on? What do we got in the hopper?
What is the next one? Okay. One, I'll give you a few. How I cure my brain fog by breathing less. So that's about that Bottega breathing technique. Because it really did help me recover quite a bit.
What's the mechanism there that actually helps?
The blood flow to the brain.
Wow.
Yeah, so more blood flow to the brain will clear the brain fog quite a bit.
Wow.
Yeah, it may not be the root cause, like blood flow to your brain might not be the root cause, but it will definitely help quite a bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a lot of meditation during COVID, which was really kind of a turning point for me when I was starting to get more and more curious around my health and just taking it much more seriously. And I was doing meditation, breath work every single day.
Yeah.
And noticed incredible results just from energy, creativity, everything. Life was much better at that point in time because I was, there was a lot of factors to that, but I found that the meditation itself was core to it because it was giving me this space to like get bored, clear thoughts out. And also, like you're saying, like focusing on your breath allows you to really focus on getting oxygen into your body in a way that you don't really naturally do in the course of a day-to-day.
Naval Ravikant talks about how meditation is like getting to inbox zero.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's just like you're like going through your emails.
I like that a lot.
And like you want to get to this point where you got an empty inbox and it's just nothingness. It's just clarity.
At peace.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Well, Kyle, this has been killer, man. I appreciate you coming on. We're definitely queued up for a part 2 here. We could probably go all day.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But where can people find you if they're interested in learning more?
Yeah, people can find me at Kyle Got Camera on any platform. YouTube specifically is my bread and butter. I probably won't respond on Instagram, but just because I don't go on there for my low screen time. And ironically though, I'm doing a rebrand.
Nice.
And so maybe I should share it here.
Yeah.
I haven't shared. When would this go live?
It's gonna go live next week, so maybe you can hold off on it. I can throw in the show notes when you do the rebrand.
Yeah.
We'll keep people a little anticipation.
Yes. So I'm switching the name of the channel.
Wow.
All my social media, all of it's changing.
Really?
So yeah, I mean, remember I shared that I was waking up in the middle of the night and there was like this thing that I needed to do, and so I feel like I'm in this big transition of, and I hope this lands for whoever it needs to land right now. It's like, if you're on a healing journey, you'll always be on a healing journey until you decide something different. Like, you're never going to get healed. I'm just going to be straight up.
That's something that people need to like rewind and re-listen to, because there's a negative vortex of being the victim in the healing journey. And
that has a lot to do with identity, you know, how you get love, how you decide who you're going to be in the world, like what's happened to you in the story that you create. And I think at any point in time, we have the power to shift that story and decide something different. And for me, what that looks like is claiming something bigger from the future. So the energy of healing is all coming from the past. This thing happened, so let me fix it.
Right.
Claiming something bigger in the future has nothing to do with the past. It might even be a totally different timeline.
Totally.
So by claiming something from the future that's way bigger, that has nothing to do with that, you're actually rewriting history.
I love that.
So if you're on the health journey, get off the health journey and get on the athlete journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a total reframe. Subtle, but it's massive. It makes you the hero.
Yep. And I think we all would love to be the hero in our own story if we just give ourselves permission to actually do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right. If you're still listening, go check out Kyle's stuff. It's incredible. Kyle Got Camera. Appreciate you coming on, brother.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me.